I invite you to turn in your hymnals to page 318, as that's the song that we'll be singing after our time of silence. The reading for today's meditation is a poem by Mary Oliver called The Messenger. My work is loving the world. Here the sunflowers, there the hummingbird, equal seekers of sweetness. Here the quickening yeast, there the blue plums, here the clam deep in the speckled sand. Are my boots old? Is my coat torn? Am I no longer young and still not half perfect? Let me keep my mind on what matters, which is my work, which is mostly standing still and learning to be astonished. The phoebe, the delphinium, the sheep in the pasture, which is mostly rejoicing, since all the ingredients are here, which is gratitude, to be given a mind and a heart and these body clothes, a mouth with which to give shouts of joy, to the moth and the wren, to the sleepy dug-up clam, telling them all over and over how it is that we live forever. I invite you now, in the time of silence that follows, to notice what you notice, with a spirit of gentleness and without judgment. We continue now in silence.
Continuing on in this spirit of oneness, we lift up the prayers of our community. We celebrate with Lauren Frank and Pat Drain, who were married yesterday. And we wish a speedy recovery for Jane Baldwin, who has a broken knee, and Bob Baker, who broke a rib. We send our condolences to Jessa Green, whose grandmother has died. And we remember Rosemary Keefe, who also died last week. Keefe was a member of the lesbian community in Corrales, a longtime feminist political activist, and internationally known as co-author of Lesbian Nuns Breaking Silence. Her death is a loss for many, but what a mark she made. We remember the young people who have taken their lives as a consequence of homophobia and bullying in our nation and around the world. And we affirm in our prayer that it is a beautiful and fitting and revolutionary thing to celebrate gay pride at church, and it should make us all proud. And finally, we remember the unspoken prayers in our community. We lift up all who are struggling with illness, grief, unemployment, addiction, all who live with loneliness, pain, or shame. May you be at ease in this space that we make sacred by our gathering. Breathing in and breathing out, I invite you to take a moment to notice what is in your heart. Put words to it in your mind if you haven't quite articulated it or looked right at it yet. And hold it gently. Maybe you don't have an answer for it, or maybe there is no answer. May you be at ease in this sacred space. May you find it to be a place where you can lay your burden down for a little while and breathe. And, child of the universe, may love pour down on you and bring you healing and peace. Amen. Peace be with you. We will now collect the offering that supports the life and ministry of the church.
I know a thing or two. Some things you feel, some things you know are true. This world's a veil. At times you can see side is you. All my tears, on them I learned to float, sailed for years. My body was the boat. What sorrow brings, no joy can wash away, but my do we come from them coming true like blossoms on a stem? Speak to me from the other side of love, from the other side of I'm here, I'm gone, and all that stuff. Speak to me from out beyond the ever-changing tide. Oh, speak to me from the other side.
Good morning. My name is Mara Hoffman. I want to share with you how I have personally been welcomed by this congregation and how I want to commit to include and welcome others. With a legacy of my paternal grandparents having been married by a woman Universalist minister in Muncie, Indiana, I eagerly joined the First Unitarian when I moved to Albuquerque in 1960. I drifted away later as I juggled being a wife, mother, and caretaking daughter. 20 years later, two extremely important events took place that changed my personal life and identity. I fell head over heels with a beautiful and fiery Hispanic woman, and then decided to leave my husband after 28 years. My coming out was not easy for my family and friends, but I remained mostly closeted. My partner was a Jehovah's Witness and could not be out, and I felt vulnerable at work because my boss, the bishop of the Episcopal Diocese, said that homosexuals were unwholesome people. I needed and sought support for my new identity and a way of being my whole self. I soon returned to the First Unitarian Church in my Unitarian Universalist roots. This was the beginning of the second event that changed my life. The Unitarian Universalist Association was looking for ways to help congregations better understand and confront homophobia. In 1989, the General Assembly voted to initiate the Welcoming Congregation program as a step toward making our congregations truly welcoming places for people of all sexual orientations. In 1994, I found myself as a part of the First Unitarian group that started this new program. With the help of study materials and panel speakers, we held personal discussion groups. We found ways to explore and better understand the issues involved. we discovered ways to become more open to our own and others' sexuality and orientation. We met in small groups of gay and straight people 4 different times, to share personal stories and concerns. One man cried when he talked about how hard it was to be in the closet as a parent of a gay son. He spoke about how liberating it was for he and his wife to find support here at First Unitarian, and eventually they all reached out to PFLAG, Parents and Family of Lesbian and Gay, where they became very active. I was privileged to share my story and listen to others throughout the Welcoming Congregation program. In later years, we had a queer covenant group facilitated by Roger Hartz and Julia Bain for 3 years running. And some of the members of the Lavender family, the LBGT extended family here at First Unitarian, are speaking at this service. In these groups, I have continued sharing in a non-judgmental and safe setting. And now to the present and future. With the blessing of our ministers, some of us have the time and desire to re-engage and help refresh and deepen our church's welcome and inclusion of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transsexual and transgender individuals and families. Our hope is that in hearing our personal stories during the service this morning, you will be inspired to join us. You can pick up a list of local LGBT resources at the connections table in the courtyard. And be sure to check out the messenger and our website for just how the re-engagement will be taking place that will no doubt be this coming fall.
Good morning. My name is Charlotte Kylan, and I've been a member of this church for 8 years. When I first came to services here, I noticed the phrase in the order of service, "We are a welcoming congregation." I thought, well, of course you are. What church doesn't welcome people? My partner Jan explained that it meant the congregation was welcoming to GLBT people like us. Church for me is a place where public and private meet. When I'm here, I'm not afraid if people know I'm a lesbian. I don't have to be afraid of hearing jokes about dykes or fags. I can relax here at First Unitarian in a way that I cannot in the wider world. I still struggle with being out of the closet. You might think society is more tolerant, so why is it still an issue? When I first came out, I find it was too hard to continue lying about who I was. I was tired of being afraid I would lose my home or my job. I wanted the acceptance that seemed to come so easily to straight people. For 18 years, I lived with a woman, her 3 children, and her mother. My partner and I never came out to her family. She had a legitimate fear of losing her children if their father found out. She had a stronger fear that her family would reject her. I went along with it because I wanted to be with her, but it was a life of denial and dishonesty. We came out to our friends, but swore them to secrecy. We put those friends in the uncomfortable position of joining our deception. For me, the decision to come out is also political. I want people to be comfortable around us queer folk. I want us to be seen as ordinary. We go to the grocery store, we work in our gardens, we pay taxes. I want everyone to know that GLBT people are not some exotic other breed. We're simply individuals trying to get through our everyday lives. And I want people to remember that when they vote. Because I can pass for straight, I usually have to tell others that I'm gay. I often do this in casual conversation. I could take the hit 'em over the head approach by saying, wasn't that a great movie? Oh, by the way, did you know I'm a lesbian? I prefer to be more subtle. Yes, I loved that movie. I saw it last week with my partner, Jan. I can see the wheels turning as they process this information. Jan, that's a woman's name. Or maybe she's seeing someone from Holland. If she's talking about a woman, how do I feel about that? It's a calculated risk of rejection. I know that in the act of coming out, I could be giving the other person power over many aspects of my life. At best, I could lose a friend. At worst, I could lose my job or even my life. I have not seen that rejection in the eyes of the people here at First Unitarian. I've been accepted here as a person who just happens to be a lesbian. This is how the members of First Unitarian practice being a welcoming congregation. This church welcomes us queer folk as part of the rich fabric of church life.
Good morning. I'm Linda Skye. 22 years ago, I met the love of my life, Jerry Noble. We were lucky. We were two women in love, and our commitment to each other was supported by our families. We lived in a neighborhood where we didn't have to hide our relationship, and we received support and encouragement from our coworkers and even our bosses. 2 years after we met, we moved to Albuquerque. Again, we were lucky. We both landed jobs at UNM, and shortly after, UNM adopted its domestic partner policy, which gives the same benefits and rights to same-sex couples as it does to married couples. Jerry started going to this church soon after we moved, and then I began to check out what she was so excited about. Over the years, we became members of the Penguin extended family. We started going to sip and sup dinners and other activities, and we generally just got involved in the work of this church. Jerry volunteered for several committees and eventually was even elected board president. We have met a lot of wonderful people here. But more importantly, we have each grown as spiritual individuals because of the encouragement and love that spills out of these doors. 2010 marked our 20th anniversary as a couple. We talked about getting married in another state like Iowa or Maryland. But the fact is that New Mexico wouldn't recognize our marriage once we returned home. So we decided to celebrate our 20th anniversary here among our friends and to treat it like a wedding. We prepared an invitation list and were amazed as it grew to over 200 people. We met with our senior minister, Christine Robinson, to discuss what elements to include in the ceremony. Christine hasn't had many opportunities to conduct same-sex ceremonies, but she helped us to figure out special ways to acknowledge all the love and encouragement that we have received during our life together. Only a few of our family members were able to travel that year, so Christine encouraged us to devise a way to include them. We asked each person to select a long ribbon and to send it to us. We received over a dozen packages with these loving mementos. Most were decorated and included words of congratulations. Jerry's mother made a ribbon from materials that were part of her 84th birthday party, and I used one of the scarves my late mother used to wear to make a ribbon in her memory. During the ceremony, when each ribbon was draped over our shoulders, the loving spirit of that person joined us. Christine also suggested that we include a ring blessing during the ceremony. We liked that idea, and we wanted to include all those who attended in the blessing. So we took off our rings, tied them with a ribbon, and they were passed among the crowd. Each person held the rings for a moment as they offered a silent blessing. This took place while we said our vows. When our rings were returned to us, they were noticeably heavier with all that extra love. Leaving the sanctuary, we were blown away by a spontaneous standing ovation. This church community is special. You not only recognize and welcome every loving couple, you encourage them and embrace them with your friendship, with your support, and with your love. Because you welcomed us, Jerry and I have been able to grow into fully active, fully engaged members of this community.
Good morning. I'm Lynn, and I want to share a story with you about my early life as a lesbian. It's called Across a Crowded Room. December 1972. My life was in chaos. I had just moved from Phoenix, Arizona to Minneapolis, Minnesota in the dead of a December winter. My ex-husband was playing third horn in the Minnesota Orchestra. My sons, Tom and Jerry, were mid-year into the 3rd and 4th grade. Packing boxes were everywhere. We had been divorced for 2 years and decided to try it again without the ceremony, mostly for the sake of the boys, and I know that rarely works. 3 days after we moved to the frigid north, the symphony was playing a Christmas concert. It was in the tallest building in downtown Minneapolis in the enormous lobby called the Crystal Court. Of course, the boys and I were to attend to see Daddy play. I knew about some of the players that my ex-husband had come to call friends. One of them was the timpani player. Her name was Paula. I looked at her across that crowded room and fell so deeply in love in just an instant. I had no idea what had just happened to me. Did I mention my life was in chaos? Thinking back, that was nothing compared to what was to come. I knew nothing about the LGBT world. I had no idea there was a difference between loving someone of the same sex and someone of the opposite sex. Why can't I walk down the street holding my lover's hand? Is it wrong to kiss her on the mouth in public? No, of course the courts won't take my children away from me, will they? Are there really straight and gay bars? And in the gay bars, you can dance together, and in the straight bars, you can't. You get the idea. I was kind of a lipstick lesbian country bumpkin. In 1974, Paula moved in with me and my sons, the ex having vacated at my request. Just after Christmas of that year, I discovered the ex had been brainwashing my boys, and they told me they wanted to live with their dad. My heart broke into a million pieces. I didn't know how to live without being a mom. I was totally devastated, and the worst was yet to come. I was about to learn the kind of discrimination the legal system could bring down on us. The judge was faced with an angry, straight father who wanted his 2 boys, and a determined lesbian mother who was appalled that the legal system was so blatantly biased in favor of the heterosexual society when it was so apparent who the children should live with. Another 2 years of battling in court, and he finally won. Most of the pain from that time in my life is gone. I have a wonderful relationship with both of my sons and have had for many years. Paula and I had a good life together. We had gay, lesbian, and straight friends. We bought a condo on Lake Mille Lacs. A Yorkshire Terrier named Peter William came to us from Sarasota, Florida, and we had a cat that put up with everything for many years. Her mother and father liked me. My father liked her. My mother hated both of us. It wasn't all roses. It never is, even for the most accepted people in society. I wanted to share this part of my story because it is the beginning of the me who is the me of now. I never looked back after that fateful December day. Paul and I lived together for 9 years, but we're loving friends until her death in 2007. I believe that that spark that flew across the room that December day was of 2 very special souls meeting again after a very long time apart. Paula wrote a short book of poetry, and I want to close with one of my favorites. I have taken off my ring now because yesterday, when you put your hand on mine, I missed out on a quarter inch of your touch.
Good morning. My name is Chris. It wasn't always, but I'll get to that. This summer will mark my 5th year in Albuquerque, although I've only been a member of our church here since last fall. I'm originally from Buffalo, New York, where I was a union bricklayer and attended the UU church there. It's taken me a while to come around because I missed my church back east and wasn't ready until recently to join another. Now I'm getting to know people and learning to feel at home. As for my union membership, I let that expire a couple years after moving here. So although I still use my trowel on the side, my days as a union brickie are behind me now. But those 10 years, first as an apprentice, then as a journeyman, will always remain an important part of my life. Before I got into the Albuquerque Fire Department last year, I used to say that getting into the trades as an apprentice was the best thing that ever happened to me. It changed my life and made everything that I did afterwards possible. In 1999, I was 22 years old and a 4th-year student at SUNY Buffalo. Everyone I had come in with as a freshman was getting ready to graduate, but I was nowhere close. The truth is, school was the last thing on my mind. I had reached a crisis. I had come to college and had realized that I was queer. Back when I graduated high school, it was as my class salutatorian. I was headed to university on an honor scholarship. My parents were doctors and hoped that I too would choose medicine. I had also happened to be fairly popular. My classmates nominated me for homecoming queen the fall of my senior year, then for something we called the sweetheart court that spring, and finally for prom queen near graduation. The fact is, I used to be a girl. It's how I was born, a healthy baby girl. So understandably, I was raised and lived as one. I won't bore you with stories of my childhood. Suffice it to say that my earliest memories include many instances when I was scolded for acting innocently enough as myself and was told instead to act more like a girl. When I reached school age, I tried to be a good kid, play the role I was given, and for the most part, I think I did fairly well. Puberty was hard, but through a mix of ignorance and denial, I somehow managed to ignore and suppress my identity and keep going. So by the time I got to high school, it was pretty much second nature for me to be a people pleaser. I was smart, I was personable, and so naturally, I would grow up to be like my mom, an independent, professional woman, well-liked and well-accomplished. Except that it wasn't natural, and with the freedom of college, I fell in love with a girl and first claimed a lesbian identity. I soon refined that to butch lesbian because the inherent masculinity there felt like a good fit. But it still wasn't a perfect one. Something wasn't quite right. Luckily, I was in school and in the queer college community at a time when the term transgender was starting to go around. At last I had a word that described precisely how I felt, namely, that the sex I was born as and declared to be at birth did not match the gender that I felt my heart and soul and mind to be, and moreover, the gender that I felt my body should have been. At first, I was happy enough to at least have a word for myself, and figured that as long as I could describe my feelings and know that I wasn't alone in them, then I could just deal with being in the wrong body for the rest of my life. But through the internet, I learned that there were people like me who didn't just resign themselves to fate. I learned that modern science and medicine could transform your body pretty closely into the gender you felt you should be. Considering that option for myself was the crisis that I faced my last year in college. I did a lot of soul searching. I had to step back and honestly consider if maybe I wasn't just crazy. To feel like you're in the wrong body is to feel like a freak, something from the Springer Show, not something real. Ultimately, and obviously, in the end I concluded that I wasn't insane, I was just trans, plain and simple, and that if others could change their bodies to match their souls, then there was no reason for me not to pursue the same congruity and happiness for myself. So I quit school. I had a high school diploma, no real employable skills, and had to realistically face and prepare for the prospect of alienating myself from my entire family. When I had come out as lesbian, what bothered my parents more than my having a girlfriend was the fact that I looked and acted like a boy. When I told them my plans to actually pursue transition, it was expectedly very difficult for them to understand and accept. With neither a degree nor any other path to a career, all I had was my family, and I had to accept the possibility of losing even them. I needed a job, and first signed on with a construction temp agency, but few companies were willing to take seriously someone who they perceived as a girl. I next tried answering ads in the paper looking for laborers. Again, my female name and female voice over the phone pretty much made me unemployable in that field, at least at an entry level. Still without work and at wit's end, I finally called the local office of the Department of Labor and asked, "How do you learn a trade?" I was told to apply to the trade unions as an apprentice. And ironically, my fact of being female, which caused me so much mental and emotional anguish, just about guaranteed me a slot in a program due to affirmative action quotas. Go figure. I feel that I owe most of my adult life so far to the experience of those following years. Learning a trade gave me an employable skill that I could take anywhere. It made me self-sufficient and gave me independence from my family while they attempted to resolve their own feelings about my identity. After working for a year, I qualified for health insurance and was then able to actually start seeing doctors and do what I needed to do to start the physical and legal transition process. Last, but definitely not least, transitioning in the trades taught me how to really own who I was, the man I claimed to be, because I had to stick up for myself and trust my sense of who I was or of who I wanted to become. I'd also like to think that in learning how to claim my own right to inherent worth and dignity, I likewise learned to give that same respect to others when trying to explain myself to those who are willing to hear it, when trying to make that connection on a human level. It was about this time that I started to feel the need to find a spiritual community that I could really feel a part of and call home. I had been baptized and raised Catholic, had gone to parochial school, had even served in many lay minister positions in an attempt during my young adult years to really take it all to heart. But the more I learned about my true self, the less I saw a place for me at the Catholic table. At the time I was living downtown, down the street from the UU Church in Buffalo, I would often walk by and marvel at its beautiful stonework and Gothic architecture. One Sunday, I just walked in, took a seat, and sat quietly, soaking in the vibe and trying to be attentive to what was going on around me. It wasn't long before I became a regular. It's true that it was the superficial stuff that first brought me to church, the beautiful building, the spectacular choir, the dark oiled wood, stained glass windows, all somehow familiar and comforting to this lapsed Catholic. But it was what I was hearing from the pulpit and witnessing in the pews that kept me coming back and eventually had me getting involved, first as an informal member, then as a participant in their young adult ministry. My trans identity never came up until I'd been going for at least a year, when the trans support and activist group that I was a part of held a remembrance service in the sanctuary. But whether or not the church officially had its welcoming congregation status, I had felt welcome from the get-go, just as a person who had dared to question some very fundamental beliefs in life and who had come to his own conclusions. Unitarian Universalism felt like home to me, and still does, because we're not afraid of our own thoughts and feelings, even if they fall outside of the norm, or call into question ideas that have long been taken for granted. How we describe ourselves also speaks to me, that it's through our deeds and not our creeds, through what we do, not just what we say, that we strive to recognize and celebrate the inherent dignity and worth of all life. My own experience would be grounds for some belief systems to cast me aside as lost or wicked. Well, I'm not lost. On the contrary, I'm found. And having found myself, I look for and delight in the coming to of others as they make their own journeys towards actualization. How could I not feel at home in a church like ours, which encourages and celebrates those journeys? Likewise, I'm not wicked. I'm only as imperfect as anyone else, but no more so. Gay pride, for me, is not about being proud per se, of my gender or my sexuality. These aren't accomplishments, they're just part of who I am. What gay pride represents for me is rather the absence of shame about who I am, about how I choose to identify, and about who it is that I just can't help but love. So today I feel very blessed and grateful for how I continue to learn about myself and others ever since I took that first scary step into the abyss and chose faith over fear, pursuing the truth of my heart in the face of misunderstanding, alienation, and the unknown. My family is now very supportive, and because I'm more me since transition, I likewise feel more truly a part of them. After years of persistence and perseverance, I'm at last, and at least, probationary in the job of my dreams. And at 35, I'm feeling the pull to raise a family of my own, but will work towards that when the time is right. It's good to know that I have a home in First Unitarian, where we embrace diversity of experience and celebrate what each of us brings. I do feel welcome here, and someday, when it's my turn, and I'm trying my best to raise young ones in this world, I know I'll have a home to bring them to, a place where love and respect are given to all, a community built on a shared humanity, a family like ours, this church.
Please rise in spirit or in body and join us in the closing hymn, number 86. Blessed were we in coming here today. Blessed may we be as we go forth. Merry meet, merry part, and merry meet again. Blessed be.